Hello, today I'm going to make chocolate and raspberry kisses. They're little tiny biscuits, two halves of chocolate biscuits sandwiched together with a raspberry filling. They're really lovely. So have a look, see what you think of these. Now this will make 48 little halves of biscuits, and so you're going to need probably 3 trays, to be honest with you. If it's too much for you, too many, you can obviously halve it and make fewer. So by the time I've finished, my 48 halves will make 24 completed biscuits. So the oven is on to gas mark 4, that's 180 Celsius, 160 fan, or 350 if you're in Fahrenheit. And I've lined my trays with my non-stick paper. You can use greaseproof if you like. And then we start to mix. I have got in my mixing bowl 200 grams of unsalted butter that's quite soft, and I've cut it up to actually try and get it to be softer because today's not a very warm day. So 200 of unsalted butter, and to that I add 100 of granulated, and it can be golden gran. And the reason that you use that for these biscuits is that it gives a slightly coarser texture, and when they're cooked they have a little bit of a sort of twinkle to them. And we have to cream this with the back of the spoon against the side of the bowl, so it takes a while. I've got the bowl standing on a rubber mat so it doesn't move around too much, and you need to break up the lumps and gradually just work the sugar into the butter. I've decided to switch to a wooden spoon because that silicone one just bends too much, and because it's bending it's not actually pushing the butter and the sugar together, so it's better with a wooden spoon. Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract to this. If you only have essence, that's fine, but you just need a teaspoon of this, and that will mix in quite easily. Right, there we are, that's done. Now, the next thing to add is some self-raising flour and some cocoa. I'll just clean my spoon off. And I'm going to put in 250 grams of self-raising flour. It's quite a lot. And I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of cocoa. You mustn't be drinking chocolate because drinking chocolate has milk and sugar added, so it alters the whole proportions of what you're doing. So 2 tablespoons of dark cocoa. And sometimes you would sieve this. Well, because of the way we're going to mix it, sieving isn't necessary. And we'll just give it a stir round. And because it's quite difficult to mix, we're going to rub it in with our fingers. So creaming and rubbing in methods in this one. So hands in and then start to rub it. Lift, rub, drop. Use your fingertips. Go around the sides. And you can see that because it's falling over, it's tumbling back in the bowl, the cocoa and the flour mix together quite nicely. And any lumps that might have been in there get pushed out. So you keep rubbing until it develops a sort of, well, it loses that white powderiness that you get from flour. It starts to look more of a moist brown. So just keep working at it. And you'll know when you're nearly there because it will start to stick together in quite big clumps. There now, can you see how that's changing and it's forming big lumps? So that's pretty much ready. What I've got to do now is gather it together into a ball. Just get most of this off my fingers if I can. And start to squeeze. Just lean on it, turn it over and press it into all the crumbs at the bottom, and then all gradually just stick together. Right, there we are, we've got our lump of dough. Okay, you can see how that's stuck together quite nicely. I'm just going to wash my hands and then we'll move on to the next bit. So I'm going to move the mat and I'm going to bring in a board because we're going to cut this to make 48 pieces, and I always think it's easier to do that on a board. Now this is where, if you've got a child around who's not at school and wants to get involved, they can help doing a bit of maths involved here, because we've got to make this into 48 pieces. So cut it in half. Now 24 out of this one. 24 out of that one. Now I've got to think about this. In halves again. That gives me 8 pieces. So 6/8 are 48. I've got to cut each one into 6. So the best way is to cut each wedge into 3, then turn it over and cut it in half. And that way you'll get the right number. And obviously you want to finish up with an even number at the end, because you're sandwiching them together 2 at a time. Sometimes they're not very equal. You can see there's a bit of a disparity there in size. Never mind. Right, let me show you what we do with these, and then I'll get all the rest done. We take one, we roll it into a ball. I'm going to start with my biggest trays first. And on the tray, they need a little bit of space because they do spread a bit. But I think I might get, oh no, I'm not going to, it's going to be 3 across there. So it's kind of domino formation, 3 and then 2 in the spaces. Another one there. There we are. And you keep going until you've cut all your pieces and you've got your 48 little balls on your tray. Nearly there, and I've almost filled 3 trays. So you can see you're going to have probably issues with the oven shelves. One tray will happily sit whilst the first 2 are cooking, and when the first one comes out you can move the second one up and then put the third one into the oven. So they're quite happy waiting, don't worry about that. So these go in the oven now, and they take round about 8 to 10 minutes. I'll tell you how to know whether they're cooked, because with chocolate things it's quite difficult because they're brown when they go in. So let's get these in the oven. Right, these are ready to go in. Gas mark 4, so I'm going to put the 2 big trays in first, and the smaller tray will happily wait, and I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. Now for my raspberry icing, it's basically a buttercream with the addition of some raspberries, and you could use fresh ones, but I've just pulled half a dozen out of a bag of frozen fruits of the forest, and I've let them thaw, and they're quite mushy, but they give it, the icing, a lovely pink colour, and you get the flavour too. So again we've got unsalted butter that I'm hoping is quite soft, and into that I'm going to work 100 grams of icing sugar. I might just do it gradually and do it with a fork. So again, pressing and pushing the sugar into the butter. This takes a little while, so be patient. And if you go at it too quickly, you'll get a cloud of sugar, so you feel as though you're working in a snowstorm. There we are, that's the first half of the sugar mixed in. Now I'll put the rest in, and again you just have to gradually work at it. If your icing sugar is a bit lumpy, sieve it, but mine doesn't seem to be, I don't know quite why. We're nearly there. You do need this to be nice and smooth, because if you put the raspberries in too soon, you finish up with a sort of granular texture with the butter, because it doesn't carry on mixing. So get it fully mixed before the raspberries go in. It's working its way away from me, I think. Right, there we are. Now, to the raspberries. Probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 fresh ones because the flavour isn't quite as pronounced. When they freeze, they become a little bit sharper, and they always go mushy because each little berry that makes up the raspberry is full of juice, and as it freezes, the ice crystals grow quite slowly, and so they're quite big and pointed, and they break through the cell wall. So when the raspberry thaws, all the juice comes out of the hole in the cell wall. So you will always get mushy raspberries if you freeze them and thaw them. But you can see that's just what we want for this. So they're quite soft, and they just go in the icing. And gradually work that in. Look at that. So you finish up with pink buttercream that tastes of raspberries. Isn't that lovely? You can imagine with the brown biscuits that's going to look really rather special. And you will always have a few little berries that don't want to mix in, or pips, but that's okay. So that can wait now until our biscuits have come out of the oven and they're cold, and then we'll use it to sandwich them together in pairs. Now the first tray is done, and I know that because I can't hear them sizzling very much. If they weren't cooked, they would sizzle like crazy. So then I move the second tray up, very sizzly, and in goes the third tray. I'm going to let these cool before I put them onto a cooling rack. So it's going to take a few minutes to be absolutely finished with these. Set the timer again for another 4 for that second tray. Now the third tray is out. I've got 2 trays on this cooling rack. If you don't have an extra cooling rack, you could always use the trivet out of your grill pan, or you can stack up the cold ones and make some space for the ones that need to cool down some more. So I'll put these onto here. And the thing to be really sure of before you ice them is that they are cold. If they're not, they'll melt the icing. So use the back of your hand, which is much more sensitive because it never gets used. If you feel like that, you can't tell anything, but if you use the back of your hand, you can just sense that warmth. So wait till they're absolutely cold, and then we can start to ice them. Now the ones that came out first are cold, so I can start to ice those. And we need to find pairs of biscuits that match size-wise. So I'm going to deal with that pair first, and I'm going to put some of my raspberry icing on one. And then just sandwich the other one together like that. There we are. And you'll need a nice plate to put them onto. And you just keep going. If you don't think your family's going to like raspberry icing, you can just use Nutella actually. So let me find another pair. Here we are. Little bit of chocolate spread. And then the matching one. And that looks good too. So keep going, and when they're really cold, be sure they're cold, get them all filled. And these are great to give to people. I've even posted them off in little boxes in the post, so very versatile. So there we are, chocolate and raspberry kisses. I hope you like these. Have a go, send us a photo, like, share, subscribe, all the usual things. Bye for now.